think in my way of reacting to this, there's two things that I'm really taking away from this. So first, which is very hopeful to the question you asked, Soji, is I think we get caught in this cycle where we feel, and I think Dr. Yon had talked about this before, where, we think that we have to be rich first before we can fight corruption, or we think that we need to eradicate corruption before we can be rich, before we can raise the incomes of our people. And the hope that this brings is the idea that there are some people who somehow, in spite of all this, are building successful businesses. They might be smaller in scale than we see in the West, but that's where the wisdom is. Those are the people who can guide us in how do we create more of you? How do we help you get more productive in what you're already doing? And then learning from that, collaborate with leaders to listen to them more and give them more of what they need. And so that's one. So all hope is not lost, because we can increase incomes without having to have everything sanitized entirely before we get started. So it's kind of something we can get going on today, right? And then the second one is this idea about how to talk to a government. So, helping articulate this wisdom that we are able to, if I think of Kenya at present, there's a big campaign that we're calling the bottom-up campaign, right? Where the government is trying to work with those, over 90% of our economy now is informal. So it's those traders in the street, and really trying to elevate that group as the core constituency of at least a particular regime that's in power right now. And you can see how these two agenda align so closely. So it's not always about giving them free loans, which is kind of the, or very low cost loans, which is the rhetoric now. But how about supporting their business, removing that harassment, removing that extortion, and they will see a difference right away. But it'll also kind of come to the top line of the country's, GDP and productivity, if we can approach it that way. There is a lot of hope in there if we could align around these ideas. And then when you asked about, how to frame corruption, I'm really fascinated. I know there's studies that have said it's not always about the big fish or hauling people off to court, but kind of chipping away at these incentives and opportunities for corruption, the work you're doing, Soji, so very important. But this one you're talking about of kind of mapping out the characters, I haven't heard before. And I don't know if that's coming from any study or it's just the ingenuity of people on the ground. But really, because when you speak to almost everybody, they say corruption is bad. Yet this thing is not happening. It's not aliens who are doing it, right? So trying to understand, when you think about incentives, what is the person thinking who's involved in this? And the typology also really helps, right? Because then you're able to see, what am I really dealing with in this particular case? And what are the kinds of interventions that might deliver for me in a much more granular way than these sweeping approaches we've been taking in the past? Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.